I remember the exact moment I got this message. You need to come home. Dad hasn't got long left. In that moment, everything I knew about life had been flipped upside down. But let's rewind a little bit. A couple of years before this, I was at university. Before uni, I was working multiple jobs. I traveled all across Africa, which was absolutely crazy. Too many stories to tell here. Now, uni for me was a mixture of drinking games, fleeting romances, dress-up parties, and trying to cram in all the studying and coursework in between all these things. But there was also this feeling a lot of the time, which was, what am I actually doing with my life? Where am I going to end up? When I was at uni, I actually put on the most weight I'd ever put on, which was, I think, 90 kg. But life during this time was really chaotic. The home visits became fewer and further between. The text messages to my family would sometimes take days or weeks for me to reply to them, and even the phone calls became quite rare at a point. And one day I was working at my part-time bartender job, and I remember getting this message that said, you need to come home. Dad hasn't got long left. So what I did, I left work immediately and I got the first train back to London to go see my family. And it was a very weird time because I hadn't seen my family in months. Anyways, I get home, I walk into the house and I go straight into my dad's room. And he's lying on this reclined bed, and his eyes had kind of lost that fire that they used to have. It just looked like his body had given up. He didn't even seem to recognize who I was. But I don't know why I kept thinking this, but I always felt deep down that he would make it. And that was a big mistake. So there's one night I was laying in bed and I remember hearing my mum say, Chris, he's going, come down now. And we're all around the bed in his room, and then there just came a moment where he just stopped breathing. And that moment hit harder than anything else, especially after all of the years knowing that he'd had cancer. And after the funeral, grief hit me like I didn't expect it to do, but we all went through the motions. The thing is with grief is that it's funny in a really cruel way. One minute you're fine, and then the next you're just completely just drowning in it. But me, like most people, I didn't want to face the pain that I was feeling, so I was smoking weed a lot of the time. I was doing a lot of drinking. But in truth, I just felt really numb. Like I was having this immense difficulty being able to process what I just witnessed and gone through. Because when it's happening to someone else, it's easy to understand. It's something that's sad. But when it's happening to you, it's this really bizarre feeling. And what I disliked most was the fact that whilst everyone would acknowledge what I'd been through for a moment, they could still move on with their lives. I was stuck feeling I was sinking with this horrible experience. And what I want to say to you is probably going to shock you, that this whole experience was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. And after all of this chaos, I ended up picking up this book called 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Some of the rules in this book did have a lasting impact on me and are still things that I follow to this day. The first one being, be honest, or at least don't lie. Stand up straight with your shoulders back. Most importantly, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. And when I was reading this book, it became really apparent to me that I was not living up to my potential. Even before this event had happened, I was not satisfied with the type of person that I was. I was avoiding some absolute bitter truths about myself, and I'd had enough. It was time to change. So I did. I stopped smoking weed. I started reading more books, exercising more frequently. I got more closer with my mum, worked a few more unconventional jobs. I started picking up boxing, and I started to realize I was becoming more confident than I'd ever been in my life. And what this came down to was the fact that I was suddenly aware that life at any point can end. I no longer became concerned about looking stupid or caring what people thought of me or failing something, because there's nothing that is more scary than something like death itself. Now, let's talk about death for a second. And I know it's a taboo subject that makes quite a lot of people uncomfortable by the very thought of it. Like, if you bring it up in conversation, people are quite quick to judge and label you as depressing or something along those lines, right? But in my eyes, I don't think that death is depressing. It's just a fact of life, and acceptance of it makes life actually a lot better for you. And the unpredictability of life made me realize that joy does not come from certainty. It doesn't come from you being comfortable. Now, discipline is actually quite a big part of my life, but there's a saying about it that I think is very true, and that is, discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. And I think that's something that a lot of us do suffer from. We only acknowledge problems when they become impossible to ignore. Like when you've pretty much got no petrol left, and that's when you decide to actually go towards a petrol station to fill yourself back up. The point stands, and this is that we all have dragons that we don't want to confront. Now, speaking honestly and acting courageously, at least nowadays, seems to be like a forgotten art. I remember back in February that there was this birthday party that I didn't want to go to. I think I had a really rough day up until that point, so I wasn't too excited for it. So anyways, I was at the party, I just start mingling, and then one of my friends comes up to me and he just says, "Chris, how do you do it? How do you look so relaxed all the time?" And what I realized is that success and having a good life is not about being perfect. It's just about showing up. Now, we all care about legacy to sometimes an insane degree, but the truth is, come 100 or a couple hundred years down the line, no one's going to really care about what we did. That's not going to matter to them. So in that, there comes this freedom that what we do matters now. Push past the doubt and the fear, and then the self-respect would come from the fact that you faced something that initially made you feel afraid. Now, to wrap up, losing my dad taught me something very valuable in myself, and that is resilience. We can't predict what's happening next. We can only focus on what is right in front of us.